Hello, everyone. Welcome to Local Energy Solutions webinar, Community Power with Standard Power. We're going to be joined by Robert Hayden, Emily Manns, and Daria Mark. Let me just pull up our intro slides here. As we wait for everyone to join us, we'll be starting at 12. Please put the questions down below. I will show a slide showing you how to add questions and add comments to the chat. All right, it is 12 o'clock, so we're going to get started. Again, this is a Local Energy Solutions webinar series presentation. We're presenting Community Power with Standard Power. Our presenters will be Robert Hayden and Daria Mark, with Emily Manns also taking questions. Please enter questions in the GoToWebinar control panel to your right under the Questions tab. Those will be answered in order of input. If for any questions, please email me at joshua@cleanenergynewhampshire.org. With additional questions or comments, I can refer those to our hosts as well. They'll have their emails in their presentation after this. If you have any questions about Clean Energy New Hampshire or New Hampshire Local Energy Solutions, please refer those to me. And let's get started. Okay, Daria, you should have control now.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, it's a little button under the screen that looks, there you go.
Yep, perfect. All right,
Hi, folks. This is Bob Hayden from Standard Power. Thank you so much for visiting with us this afternoon during lunchtime on this gorgeous day. It's nice to finally see the sun shining a little bit. I'm here with Daria Mark from Good Energy to talk about community power, some of the stuff we've done already and what we look forward to doing in the future. Overall, we are trying to show you that this program can be low cost, no risk, and the community can work as much on it as they like, or we can do all the heavy lifting and move the program right along from start to finish. We'll talk about getting you to the point where your plan is ready and what comes after. So if you could go to the next slide. So I've worked with some of you folks out there before from Standard Power as we serve 65 communities and school districts for their municipal electricity. Standard Power has been in the brokering business of electricity primarily for schools and towns for over 10 years. In addition, we administer the largest group of net metering facilities in New Hampshire, primarily local hydros, facilities that are all around you. And occasionally we help some of the solar facilities if they need extra net metering members, so we help them also. And then a common thing that we do, because we work so much in renewables, is we help communities integrate their own assets, solar or hydro, and or RECs, to help them reach their existing renewability goals. When we first looked at the community power law that was passed a couple of years ago now, and signed by Governor Sununu, we wanted to do an immediate alpha test. And we're kind of told by the PUC and the suppliers that the then law wasn't ready for prime time. So we still tried to process that, but we weren't able to, frankly, and then COVID hit. Along the way, we realized that there was a huge amount of work that went into a successful implementation of community power, a lot of community outreach, a lot of having community input to define what a plan really looks like and how to make sure it represents the community. And then implementation along the way has a few other steps. Both, it looks like the PUC will be doing approvals for these plans and should be doing that soon. So we realized that we needed to either hire a bunch of people or find a good partner to help us do all of those things to guarantee successful implementations. Good Energy is that company. They have a huge amount of experience across not only New England, but across the country on community power. And it works under various names across the country, but in general, all of the programs from Good Energy are very successful, and Daria will tell you more about that.
Thanks for the intro, Bob. Yeah, so we've been doing community power programs all across the country. They're called different things: municipal aggregation, green municipal aggregation, community choice aggregation, lots of different things, but the premise is exactly the same. And so we have a New England team that's focused here. We have more than 40 programs, 44. We just launched our 44th active program in Massachusetts, and we have 53 clients in Massachusetts, with the remainder who are not active yet, going through their regulatory process or through their community outreach process that we are managing for them. We have a buying group that we're working for in Rhode Island. We just got the first 4 plans in Rhode Island. Like New Hampshire is a state that's just getting into the idea of aggregation. It's a very exciting time. And so we have programs there with Providence, the city of Providence being the anchor for that group, starting out this year into next year. And we've been really successful in achieving savings for our programs across New England, and over $80 million so far. So we'll talk today about some of the basics on community power, our approach to making these programs successful, the buying group that we're forming, and we'll give a legislative update of what's happening in New Hampshire and how it will impact the decisions that are made going forward. So I want to give a small background, but very important background in community power, because you're going to get questions on this as you talk to other members of your team or the public about what is it that you're trying to do with community power, and what can be done, and what's impacted. So there's 2 parts to electricity service. There's supply and delivery. The delivery portion always stays with the utility, and delivery is really everything that it takes to get the electricity to you. It's the meters that meter the electricity. It's the wires, the poles, the grid, everything, the substations, everything that it takes to get electricity to you, which also includes the billing. And so with the community power program, the bill a customer receives is actually very, very similar to what they had received before. The only difference is in the supply portion. Supply portion has just one small line, so it's often overlooked. but it's that portion, that supply part, which is half of your, usually about half your bill, that would be impacted if your community is doing a community power program. And that supply you could choose. So you might have heard third-party suppliers, competitive suppliers, supply offers, etc. That's what they're going after. It's to change that supply. And community power programs are very different in many ways. They've offered a lot more transparency, a lot more local vetting, a lot more control. And for that reason, community power programs are just, and aggregation programs that we run in Massachusetts are really well loved by their communities. And why we are seeing so many cities and towns who haven't yet gotten a plan approved moving forward and getting their plans ready, getting their plans approved, and looking to do this because it offers great benefits to the community. So some basics, because you're taking over the supply for, you're taking the supply portion, you're taking over for the supply portion of the electricity service, you could offer different options. That's a great benefit because there's going to be people in your community who are really focused on climate change and they want lots of renewables. And then there's going to be people who kind of maybe okay with a little bit of renewable energy. And then there's going to be people who are just saying, look, I just want the best deal. And because you're taking, because you can offer multiple options, you can really find a place for everyone there that's in the program that's a vetted, good, solid choice. So that's a really big plus. Any electricity customer in your community can participate. Voluntary participation for these programs, it really means that people can leave at any time. There's no penalty, there's no fee, there's no contract that they have to sign. So individual participation is voluntary. Automatic enrollment, that is for those who have not previously chosen a supplier. So as I mentioned, there's this competitive supply that some people had done. Those folks have already chosen a supplier, so automatic enrollment is not an option for them. But those who are still on basic, on utility service, they can be automatically enrolled into these programs. And that's how the program can really decrease the barrier to entry, really make it very, very, very simple for people to participate. All you do is open a letter, read the letter, the program is clearly explained there, and then move on with life. And those are that letter is an example of the kind of outreach that we do for these programs to make sure the community is aware of what's happening and all the benefits. Another great benefit is any low income and net metering, there's net metering options for customers also. And you can do the community power program individually as a community, as a city or town or county. But you could also enter a buying group, and buying groups are really flexible. The way we run our buying groups, and we do multiple groups in Massachusetts, including one that has 25 different communities, bigger cities, small towns, and everywhere in between. Some focus on renewables, some don't add any renewables at all. So it's a very flexible system, and the buying group will talk a little bit more about it, but really allows you to have your own vision and your own plan for your community program, but allows you to benefit from buying with others. And that's really powerful. So individually, your plan will bring competitive rates. I mean, obviously we can't guarantee savings in the future because we can't, we only know utility rates 6 months out, but these programs have been really, really successful in being able to produce competitive rates. And the reason for that is that you're taking a large amount of electricity out to a market at a time that's favorable. And so using that strategic buying is something that we've been doing for many years now. And we have, as I mentioned before, been able to achieve savings for our communities. You're having local control. That means that you get to decide what options to offer. And, you know, obviously everybody has to meet the state standards, but beyond that, like, what do you want to do with this program? That's a really important piece to these. Price stability, these programs tend to run for multiple years. We just started a program that's over 3 years in duration. That's really valuable. You can provide that transparency and stability going forward instead of utility rates that constantly change. Consumer choice, they've talked about the different options you can offer. And education awareness comes with that also when we're talking about these programs to the community. The great deal of education goes out. I can't tell you how many times we've had community members say, oh, I don't want to change from my utility, I like my utility, et cetera. And then we, at a community meeting, look at their bill and it shows that they are not getting supply from the utility, they're getting supply from someone else, and they're being charged several cents, sometimes several cents more than the utility would be charging them. So having that education awareness piece to these programs is really valuable. So that opportunity to get people to understand what's in their electricity and how they can be changed and improved is really, really important. And then the other three really important benefits are innovative local programs, renewable energy, and energy planning. So again, because you're you're offering choices for that electricity supply, you can really think about kind of where does your community want to go, and as far as renewable energy goes, and how to get there with the different tools that you will have. And then I will turn it over to Bob to talk about how to get started.
Hello again. Thank you, Daria. The most important thing is to have a team, a community power committee. And we are actually helping some communities form their committees now. And then the Standard Power Good Energy team has a very simple MOU, a couple pages long, that says we'll help you with all of the development of your program, including the community outreach, either individually or reaching out to members of local groups and being speakers in those venues. But that's really the minimum that a community could do. And then some communities will be extremely involved and have very detailed input into a plan. Other communities will say, help us do this. We want as much help as we can get. And then our team will do all the heavy lifting. As we move along, we are looking at doing a buying group, but each community will have the ability to customize their own plan. That is extremely important. So everybody has choice in what the plan looks like for themselves, their community individually. We need to secure approval of the local governing body. So we want to be prepared primarily for town meeting time coming up next year, so that we'll be on schedule to move these plans along. And as I mentioned earlier, the expectation is that the PUC, now the Energy Department, will be approving these plans. And so if the documents are a little bit similar, it might improve the approval cycle. Additional outreach to the community is important along the way, right from the beginning to when the plan is developed. So we'll use input to help develop the plan, but also to approve the plan once it's done. So far, we're working under that MOU, and there's no risk to the community. There's no cost to the community. We bear that risk and cost and assume that we'll do a great job for you and satisfy the community's wants, and that when it's time to launch the plan, you'll engage us to go and buy the power and develop the renewable programs and implement them for you. That's where we'll make our fee. And then afterwards, the ongoing support is important, because it's really important for any community to enjoy the success of a successful implementation. If you're driven by 100% goals for your community to reach 100% renewables, it's great to see the clock tick along and see how you're doing. The more people have the opportunity to look at stuff like that, the more engaged they will be. It'll maybe make a little buzz in the community that'll help folks upgrade to higher levels of renewability, if that's what matters. Or if it's just seeing a bar chart about, or a chart about how much money they've saved as a community, that's important too. So that kind of data will be available. Next. Oh, this is a wonderful slide. This was a very fun day. This was when we brought the first plan in the state, the Keane Community Power Plan, to the then PUC. This is Elizabeth Dragon, the town manager or administrator from Keane. We went up and brought it to the then PUC office, and we're hoping that it'll remain the first in line for approval, as Keane is very excited to get their plan going and implemented. Now, Keane's a great example of a community that has high goals. They want to be 100% renewable for their energy use by 2030. Community power is a great building block to start with that. But they also have some very significant plans and wants for efficiency and milestones to help reach these goals. So in their case, they have resources available to make the program work and to develop it. But I mentioned some communities won't have those resources, and we're more than happy to be those resources in many cases, so that a community who has good goals but not a lot of time available can get this implementation done with our help. So we're hoping that the new energy department will be able to approve these plans quickly. We'll talk a little bit about the legislative update at the end and how that fits with all this. Next slide, please. Okay, so I've mentioned that we have a 2-page MOU. We want this to be simple. We don't want it to be complex. We want to have a simple program with no cost and no risk. So under our 2-page agreement or MOU, we pledge to work with you on everything up to the purchase of the electricity supply. That's all of the outreach, all of the plan development, the committee meetings, or even helping draft a committee, as we're doing in a couple of towns. So we're there to be fully involved. We are competing with the Joint Powers Agreement, which is a 40-page document. We believe in simplicity. We don't want to put any risk on the communities. There's possibilities of risk in a massive document like that. So we keep it simple with an MOU. We don't expect that communities will have to follow a program set up by the initial communities. The plan will be each community's plan. Their input will define what it is. Next. So, in general, the summary of that is that we are your consultant, strategist, designer, buyer's agent, legal representation, and customer support. We help you do all those things. Or we enjoy doing it with you. It's up to you. That way, regardless of what your goal is, your staff can focus on their goals, making an appropriate decision, and the approval process. Next. Oh yeah, buying groups. Standard Power and Good Energy have been doing buying groups for years. In the Standard Power arena, many of you or some of you have been in buying groups with Standard Power for your municipal and school load for as long as 9 years. That's been very successful. It gives us the ability to leverage the cost of electricity. And Good Energy, as Daria mentioned, has several buying groups, not only in Massachusetts, but in other communities across the country or other states across the country where municipal aggregation is approved. So in a buying group, the community still retains all of the services we provide. You can have unique goals or unique features for every plan within the group. And that's important because there are a wide range of communities. One of the communities I talked to says, gee, we just want the cheapest price we can get, and we think that represents 75% of our community. Well, we haven't done the community outreach, and we don't really know if it's 75% yet, but it may be, and that may be their goal. But then we have communities that say, we're on our way to 100%, and we care a lot. So those things will all be variables that are available in the group purchases. Again, there's no cost, there's no risk, there's no obligation. We'll go all the way through this process with you, and if in the end you decide not to initiate the plan, that's okay too. We suspect that in most cases, if we get to that point, communities will be more than happy to see their goals achieved. Another important feature, oh, go ahead.
Please finish.
Yep.
I was going to add that I think it's a really important thing to emphasize that in our buying groups, there's no formal agreement between communities. The only thing the communities agree to do is to come together for a meeting when you're doing the bidding. So it's a very short time, and we all get together in a virtual room and discuss about the different options that are on the table. That's really the only commitment that you would make to be in the buying group. So that's, I think, a really important piece to remember. And then the supplier that you choose, it's the same supplier for that whole buying group. But it's usually not a difficult choice. It's usually really straightforward, and we guide you through the process of picking the right supplier. And the supplier then bears the risk of the program. So that's a really important thing also, is that the community, when we say the community doesn't bear the risk, if something goes wrong, it's on the supplier, right? It's not on the community, and it's not on the ratepayers. So that's a really important thing, and a really important feature of our buying groups and our programs.
And then back to the suppliers, we only work with highly vetted national level suppliers that have the financial wherewithal and are robust enough to endure any problems that occur. There have been lessons learned in this over the years, but there are a top tier set of suppliers that are right for this kind of business. And again, we're doing all of this stuff under the 2-page MOU. Next. Oh, legislative update. This is literally where magic occurred in the political session this year. Both SB 91 and HB 315, which includes the language from SB 109, are expected to be signed by the governor very soon, probably at an event at Mines Falls in Nashua, where Kevin Avard, the local senator, will be able to enjoy a lot of work he's done, not only this year, but in past sessions. And why I say this was a little magical is because HB 315, as initially written, was a poison pill for community power. And through a very intensive work session where Cliff Below was integral in that, and so were folks from Standard Power and Good Energy, both sides of the political fence, suppliers and other vendors, an agreement was reached. An agreement across all of those folks is extremely rare in politics in general, but specifically here in New Hampshire. So for everybody to agree on a bill and the language associated with it was magic. It was wonderful. In addition, at the last minute, the language from SB 109 was added. And what that says is that municipalities and school districts will be able to use renewable energy projects from 1 to 5 megawatts. So for everybody who's a member of Clean Energy New Hampshire, we've been working on this for 4 years. And this is a little less than we wanted, is we've had these bills out in the last 3 years that were in general an acute increase to 5 megawatts. But this really is a starting point, and we expect that this will become more and more available to not only schools and towns, but hopefully next community power plans. So there's a little bit of irony there in that a community power plan can't use the bigger projects yet. But by next year, we'll probably have that too. And then SB 91 has a variety of things that help us put more tools in our tool bag for doing renewable energy in not only community power, but across the state in a variety of ways. So these two bills are likely to be signed off together by the governor at an event in the next couple of weeks. If anybody out there has inside information to exactly which day that is, or if there's a commitment to it, that'd be great. Send it in the chat box and we'll let everybody know. But again, this was a great session for us. And the poison pill of HB 315 was averted and turned into a great bill. Next. I guess we're up for questions.
All right, we have a couple questions here. I see 6 total. If anyone else has more questions, please put them in the chat box, or in the question box, I should say. The first question from Grace Garvey in Plymouth is, what would define a small business? I'm guessing that means in relation to community power programs.
Hi, Grace. Nice to meet you this way. A small business typically has a G meter and probably uses less than a couple 100,000 kilowatt hours a year. They would be eligible to join the program, and if they're not being served by a third-party supplier at the time of launch, they would be eligible. Many of these businesses already have third-party suppliers. In fact, in Keane, we have several folks or businesses that will be renewing at the same time or close to when the community power program should launch. And they're looking forward to being part of that plan right from the get-go. So they normally have third-party supply contracts that end at a certain time that should be about coincident with the launch of the Keane plan.
Thank you, Bob. Next question from Brad Roscoe is, I currently have a rated meter on my house under Eversource's Heat Smart program. Since I have a geothermal heating system, how would that special meter be affected by a supplier change? And would I still get the good discount on power from that meter?
Yeah, that's a great question, and congratulations on participating in that program and having that heat source in your house. The supply rate, in fact, can change and can go to a community power plan. So you would enjoy an additional savings, or maybe if you chose to be 100% green, you might pay a little extra. But the two programs will work together.
Thank you. Next one is from Fred Portnoy. What is the distinction between a buying group and community power?
So do you want to do that one, Daria?
Sure. Okay, I got the mic. Yes, so community power is the name of the program that a city or a town or county would run. And a buying group is when a few of these, or many of these, community power programs come together and buy electricity together. So I guess if we want to be very explicit, it would be either a community power program and you would buy electricity on your own, or it's a community power program and you're in a buying group buying electricity together. So that's the distinction. It's still all community power. It's the name of the programs that enable this kind of buying for supply. And the only distinction there is your municipality doing it independently, or is your municipality doing it, creating their own plan, creating their own program, but then joining others for the purchasing portion, and that's a buying group.
And another feature of that that's really important is the fact that we'll have some tiny communities that want to participate, and their ability to be part of a buying group will allow them to leverage the cost of the basic cost of the electricity. So this plan is open to all communities, and we know there'll be tiny towns, and we want to make sure that the tiny towns are served just as much as the bigger communities in the cities. In addition, the political season, where we have town meetings for many communities, is from March to May, which lends itself to an approval cycle of a couple of months for many plans that could be in a buying group and again leverage their costs. So there's a couple of reasons why it makes sense, and one is leveraging price, two is our political season.
Thank you, Bob. Our next question is from Bruce Norland, and is, what is an MOU?
Thanks, Bruce. That's great. I'm sorry I used an acronym. I know we speak in too many acronyms some of the time. MOU is Memorandum of Understanding. It's a non-binding agreement for us to work on your behalf to help you develop your community power plan. Very light reading. And really it's a page and a half with a half a page of signatures. So a light document that compels us to work together until the actual time to buy. So we'd work right with you right through to the Energy Department's approval of your individual plan. Great. Under that document.
From Joel Huberman, when will the Keane plan be approved by the PUC?
That's a great question, Joel. And everybody who has a plan will be interested in the answer. We don't know the answer right now. The change in the structure of the PUC to the Energy Department has already occurred. The HB 315 bill has not been signed by the governor, and much of the language in that is enabling language, including the requirement of the PUC review. Excuse me, I say the PUC, the Energy Department's review. So we have to wait for those things to follow on their sequence. So we will have the sign off of HB 315. We'll have some rulemaking done by the Energy Department, one of which will define how they actually review the plan, and then they'll have 60 days. So we're hoping that we're 3 to 4 months away.
Great, thank you. From Grace Garvey again, this is there an example of a community that has been doing this for years, and what are their savings?
So as you know, this is all new to New Hampshire, but I think Daria can probably tell you and maybe direct you to their website as to where there's some answers to that in Massachusetts. Is that possible?
Yeah, so we have a buying group that I mentioned before. It's 25 communities. It's 25 communities now. What's interesting about that buying group is that it started with 18 or 19, 6 years ago. They launched just their third. Renewal just this January, and so they have been doing this for years. I don't have off the top of my head how much of the savings that group has saved, but overall, with us as a team, we've saved in Massachusetts over $80 million to our different participants in our different communities.
And Grace, if you'd like, I know we're probably going to be talking soon. If you want to have a bill handy, I can show you on a very individual basis how that might look.
I think it's also important to understand that enabling community power and going through with the process of getting a plan approved and then going out to bid does not require you to accept the bid. So we work really hard to make sure that the options that are presented to you are competitive. And if the community likes it and you at that time see it and want to go forward, that's great. If we decide as a team that this is not the right bid for the community, this is not the right price to start the program with, then we wait. We come back in another 3-4 months. We've had some communities that we had to wait over a year and a half because the market to launch the program, even though they were approved, because the market of where they were we could not beat it as a program. So there is no obligation to use a community to start your program at the bid time. It's a decision that you make, and we guide you through all the steps, the understanding indicative pricing, the understanding the bidding, and understanding what you're seeing in front, and then making an informed decision on that. So this isn't just like a process that rolls. It comes with your decision making and your input, and that's a really important thing.
All right, thank you. Grace also has another question that is, why would we go through Standard Power as a middleman?
So I'm happy.
That's a great question.
That's a very good question. And we get asked that question all the time. Is it possible for a community to just do it on their own? So far in Massachusetts, we haven't seen a community go out on their own because there's a great deal of value of leveraging the knowledge, the experience, and the skills that we have, right? The knowing how to do the outreach, how to write the plan, how to get the regulatory approval process, how to do bidding for suppliers. If you don't hire the Standard Power Grid Energy team, you as a community have to do all that on their own. And even though in Massachusetts and now in Rhode Island, we work with some communities that have dedicated staff who work on energy issues and sustainability, none of them have said like, yeah, we're just going to do this on our own and do all of this heavy lifting and invest hundreds of hours into getting this done. Because it is a heavy lift, and it's really important to have the experience of someone who's done this before, who has shown successful programs, and we have a lot of our programs have been going for years, as you asked earlier, and are really successful, really well loved, and are now into their next stages of, doing heavy outreach to get more people into the 100% option. So getting our skills and our experience on your side to guide you through this process is really key, really important.
Thank you. From Charlie Agnew, would it be easier and more flexible to simply buy RECs to replace the community program?
Well, that's a great question. And you could literally, actually, there are some communities that buy RECs already for their municipal load so they can be greener or 100% green. There was a time when New Hampshire was the fastest growing state on the EPA Green Power Partnership 100% Club. And if you'd like the story on that, give me a call sometime, Charlie. I'd be happy to tell you about it. But yes, a community could find some way to buy RECs all on their own and cover the usage of all of their residential load. But it'd be a very hard thing to allocate costs on an individual basis for those RECs and to have any kind of approval thereof. So that's a difficult path, but the answer is anybody can buy RECs on the market. So it typically makes sense to have some help with that. Another point on RECs in general is that we're hoping that by using some RECs in these programs, we'll be able to have them from local projects, with the idea that if people can see a project that's part of their community power plan by purchase of RECs, then it'll help energize the idea of helping renewable energy proliferate locally, countywide, statewide. All those things will help New Hampshire move into a greener, more renewable future.
Great, thank you. Grace, I'm just going to skip your question because I've answered a couple. We have a bunch left on here, but I will record those questions and send them over to Daria and Rob. From Peter Nelson, how do you identify qualifying low and moderate income accounts that want to participate in Community Power Group, and how is that information updated and verified over time?
So that's through the data from the utility. We initially don't have access to it. And once we actually are going out to bid, we start acquiring that level of data. And so updating it will be up to review of the participation list with the utility on an occasional basis. Do you have more on that one, Daria?
Nope, sorry, I was fumbling with my screen share to try to share a slide to answer a previous question. No, keep going.
Okay, so yeah, that will be through the utility data set. So far, we don't have complete access to that because no plans are approved.
All right, great. From Joseph Kubit, does the town have to vote to form a community power agreement?
So the expectation is the town votes on the plan itself when it's complete. Everything else up until that point does not require a vote. We may see towns who try to, circumvent that a little by empowering the committee to make a choice along the way. But I think that for the most part, virtually all communities will run this through their governing body when it's complete and either approved by the PUC, or in the case of Keane, they approved it internally first, and then now it's over at the PUC. It's been there waiting for over a month, almost 2 months now. But that is the process they follow. The exact sequence is not clearly defined, and it may be defined in rulemaking that will come up soon once HB 315 is signed. But it could be either way. But yeah, some approval has to occur.
Thank you. Next one is from Anthony Sapienza. Is there any guarantee that the community power price would be lower than the utility's default rate?
Daria, you want me to go on that, or?
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm happy to answer that. So when we're going out to bid, we know what the utility price is. And when we get the bids, we know how they compare to the utility price. And we can make a decision then and there, and for the next 6 months or 4 months or however much time we have in the utility cycle. So it's important to understand utility rates change every 6 months. So at the time of bidding, we can know what the price is and how it compares to the utility, but we don't know utility prices going to the future. We can estimate based on past experience, based on past utility rates. We can estimate based on market predictions, but it's an estimate. So that's why I mentioned earlier, we can't guarantee a savings because no one can predict the future with 100% certainty. But we could look at trends, and we could look at current price now and trends going forward, and estimate how we're doing, how we're going to do. So, I think it's important to understand that we're not, when doing a community power program, we're not creating some new market mechanism. What we're doing is grouping electricity use of thousands of residents and businesses in one community to buy electricity together, because that makes for a lot of electricity all at once. That lot of electricity is really parallel to what large industrial customers do. They just happen to be one customer that uses a lot of electricity and takes their electricity out to bid to a competitive market for a multi-year program. And that process of taking your electricity in large amount out to bid to a competitive market for a multi-year contract is what we're paralleling. None of us as individual residential owners, in my home, I do not consume enough, thankfully, enough electricity to qualify as an industrial customer with that kind of load that I could get a competitive price. But if we do it together, that's where the word community comes in, right? If we do it together, then we can predict that we will be competitive going forward. And so that's the answer to that question. Can you guarantee a savings going forward? No, but we can predict that these programs will be competitive, and we can do a lot of background work to make sure when we're going out to bid, it's a competitive bid. That's why we always bring multiple suppliers into the bids to make sure that there is competition and that the rate we're getting is an excellent one.
And the bottom line is, if the utility rate is better and someone wants to go back to the utility, they're free to do so at any time with no penalty, no fee. They can go back to the utility whenever they want. So we really have to perform to succeed, both for ourselves and for the community.
Thank you. This is another from Grace, which I think that is very relevant. How are GE and Good Energy and Standard Power funded in total?
We're both for-profit companies, so we're a regular company. We're funded through the purchase of the electricity. So we get a small fee on every kilowatt hour that a community, a business, a school purchases.
Okay. Next question from Joseph Kubit. is, what would happen to my old one-to-one net metering agreement with Eversource if I left them?
If you leave it, right now some of that will be up to rulemaking. I have that same net metering program too. It's great. If I had no surplus at the end of the year and bought some power, say in November and December, then I would be able to probably, based on rulemaking that has not occurred yet, enjoy the lower cost of third-party supply associated with a community power program. But we're really waiting for the rulemaking session to define some of those things more clearly. What we're sure of is that anybody who has that program, the more current program or any other program, does at least as well as they're doing. And if they couldn't do at least as well as they're doing, we would surely discourage them from being part of the program.
All right, great, thank you. Next one is from Lisa Sweet. Does the Community Power Committee decide on the options that are offered, or does Good Energy and Standard Power? How does that work, and how frequently do the options need to be renegotiated?
So that really is based on community outreach. We want to know what the community wants and design an individual plan based on the wants of the community. We would think that it could be redone on occasion. One would assume that that occasion would be renewals, contract renewals, but it might also be more frequent based on how the utility tariffs evolve. So every year we have a rulemaking session, or we have, laws that change, and a change in law may impact a community's decision on to change the plan a little bit. So that could happen in the middle of a contract cycle, or it could be coincident to a renewal. So there's a lot of different possibilities there, but the basic answer is the community decides on what their plan looks like, and it could be evolved over time, even within a contract period.
Thank you. Joseph Kubit also asks, what happens to a town's solar array under a power purchase agreement?
Okay, so right now, the town's power purchase agreement is to serve the municipal load. I don't believe I don't believe there's anything that looks like an old-fashioned community power plan that has, pre-2019, that has a PPA associated with it. So I assume that question would be for municipal load. So under the terms of the PPA, you probably have some specific meters associated with it and with the project, hopefully behind the meter in some cases, so that there may be other municipal meters that are not served by the municipal solar that could be served in the community's community power plan.
Thank you. This is from Howie Wemmes. Would businesses in an unincorporated place be eligible to be part of a buying group?
Well, they could be part of a buying group for sure, because there are buying groups for businesses. If it's a resident and a community wants to include in their plan the ability for folks in the unincorporated area to participate in their community, then that could be part of a community's community power plan to serve either residents or businesses in the unincorporated area. But that's a great question, and I have not seen it specifically addressed in any rulemaking so far with the PUC, because we did have a rather extensive rulemaking session over the last year and a half. That's a great question, and I would assume that a community could decide to serve, the adjacent unincorporated area if somebody really asked them to and lobbied them to include that in their plan.
I think that makes sense as well. From Anthony Espienza, can a community power program or buying group be based on price only? That is to say, without regard to other political agendas or fuel sources?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know one town that I think of whenever I have a question like that has repeatedly told me, all we care about is price. All we care about is price. So I would hope if we proceed with them that their community outreach suggests that there are more wants than just price in the community. But if that's solely what the community wants, that's what their plan will look like.
And that's one of the really important benefits of our buying groups is that because your plans are individual, you can have a community that's really focused on renewables and buy electricity with a community that's like just price. They don't want any renewables, they don't want any, nothing else. And because the renewable electricity portion is bid separately, you can make that choice and you could still all be in a buying group together. It does not require you to align on your choices. And that's a really important piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. From Vinu Rao, the Nashua Regional Planning Commission aggregates a bunch of towns and school districts in its region to buy electrical power. How is that different from community power?
It's kind of similar. Standard Power does currently serve the Nashua Regional Planning Commission's municipal and school loads. We're actually pricing that right now. And it will be a group. That group will have leveraged buying capability based on its volume. And that's how that group has worked over the years. Likewise, similarly, a community that participates with other communities will have additional leverage at their time of purchase. In addition, it's possible, and I think that we'll probably do some presentations through the Nashua Regional Planning Commission, and I think several others, that they could eventually offer services of aggregating communities as part of the benefits they provide. So right now they're not exactly the same thing, but they enjoy the same benefit of leveraging the cost of power.
I think, yeah, the short explanation of the distinction is that what the National Regional is doing is for municipal loads, so for municipal buildings, and community power programs are for residential businesses, small businesses, anybody who hasn't chosen supplier. So it's just a different group, same mechanism, same benefits, really parallel processes, but just different groups on focus. And as Bob was saying, in the future, they could definitely include each other.
Thank you. Penti Alto, would a real-time price be available for customers that want it?
Hey, Penti, how you doing? Long time no see. I surely miss you, buddy. I think that that's a great question, and I look forward to when the utility tariffs all have time of use as part of their program. It'll allow us to leverage the values of attributes, which are really difficult to monetize here in New Hampshire. So I think it's important to continue your participation in the grid mod, and for all of us to push for the some of the dockets that have gone so slow the last few years, get them revved up again so that we have a modern future for the New Hampshire grid. We have the potential to do it with dockets that exist now at the Energy Department, and we really need to call them to action on moving forward with the future of our New Hampshire power system and to participate at those levels in the New England ISO.
Great. Thank you. This will be our last question as we're running out of time. From Joel Huberman. Please clarify, would the Good Energy and Standard Power partnership offer a community a plan with built-in choice so that individual residents in the community could choose an emphasis on price or an emphasis on % of renewable energy?
Yes.
Yes.
It's a very short answer. Yes, you get a plan. It has built-in options. If you want to add more options, great. If you want to take some options out, great. If you want to have a plan that has lots of different options, and then at bid time decide which options you want to make public, great. We've had communities do that. They put more things in their plan than they necessarily launch a program with. So it's still okay.
Yeah, Keane has 4 different choices.
Great. Thank you.
Great
Well,
question.
I want to say thank you, Daria and Rob, or Bob, for being and doing this with us, explaining your community power programs and being so generous in answering these questions. If anyone didn't get their emails from the slide they put up, I'll be sending it out on the email that I send out after this webinar. Please reach out with any questions you may have, and please look to Local Energy Solutions and Clean Energy New Hampshire for your energy education needs.
Thank you so much. And again, anybody's welcome to reach out to us individually also.
All right. Have a good day, everybody, and try and enjoy the weather.
Thank you so much for participating.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.